main source.
Abhijit.
Yeah.
Yes, recording is in progress.
Yeah. The main source of our knowledge for all of this is Swami Prabhanandaji. Swami Prabhanandaji most recently was senior vice president of the order. He passed away not too long ago. I knew him very well. He was a very wonderful Swami and a wonderful scholar also. He wrote something called the Antya Lila. This is about that third and final act. We find this in the life of Chaitanya Deva. Also, they divide his life into there's Adi Lila, Madhya Lila, and Antya Lila. So he did the same thing. And Swami Chaitanandaji also, based mostly on this information, he also wrote several different things. A lot of it is found in the book More About Ramakrishna. These are English publications. And then The Last Days with Ramakrishna, there's a chapter in the book on M, Mahendranath Gupta. The reason why we needed a lot of scholarly work done is that M apparently was not able to write much about those final days. And we assume that, number one, it was probably too painful for him. Number two, that there may have been many days when Sri Ramakrishna didn't say anything because of the pain in his throat. Very often he would just indicate things or remain silent. And Swami Sharadanandaji, in his Leela Prasanga, the great master, he also doesn't write much about that final period. Now, the Swami Prabhanandaji, he was able to get hold of M's journals. Most of you probably know that what M would do, he would sit with Sri Ramakrishna, and then he would go home and he would write everything down in some cryptic form, some kind of his own shorthand notation. And then later he would meditate deeply and everything would come back into his mind. And that's how he wrote out the Kotamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So he also, for some reason, doesn't give us too much information. There are long gaps on that final portion of Sri Ramakrishna's life. So a lot of this is taken from things that he wrote down in his journal, but didn't put into the final version of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Kotamrita, for whatever reason. But the Swami Prabhananda, he was able to get hold of these journals, which are kept very guardedly by the family of him. And he got a lot of information about that because M kept all sorts of details. M was the one who was responsible for going to the different doctors, Dr. Sharkar and others, and giving a report and all sorts of things, how much blood was lost in a day, and very painful things to think about. So this is why none of this was recorded earlier. But we do have information. And there are a lot of things that we have that we know about this, what I want to call the final act of the play of Sri Ramakrishna, because it's very, very significant. There's a theory in the literature about the composition of a novel. And it has to have some initial development, then rise in the action, some type of conflict, ultimately a climax, and then there's something at the end called denouement, which is untying the knot. And this untying the knot is a way of really answering all the final little questions and making sense out of the whole thing. So this is what we find in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. There's a very nice quote from Swami Nikhilanandaji about these different acts of the divine play. He says, there is a liquid beauty in the rising sun. There is a royal splendor in its midday blaze, and there is also an exquisite grace in its setting glow. So it is with the life of a great man. There is sweetness in its childhood and adolescence. There's resplendence in its maturity. And again, there's deep pathos in its last days. Now, where do we draw these dividing lines? We can say that Act 1 was Sri Ramakrishna's life in Kamarpukur, up until the time that he came to Kolkata with his older brother, Ram Kumar, and then ultimately to Dakshineshwar. So Act 2 would be his days in Dakshineshwar. This is where he underwent his sadhana. This is where he met many of the great pundits of the day, where many of the members of the Brahmo Samaj came, and eventually, ultimately, his future direct monastic disciples. So this is, of course, one of the most important portions of his life. And then the final act, Act 3, would be the final days of his life after leaving Dakshineshwar because of his health. So this will go back to, this is actually in part 2, we can say, but very significant entry in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna on April 24th, 1885. And Thakur was at the home of his disciple Balaram Bose and went to see him around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then Sri Ramakrishna said to M, "Are you well? I'm feeling rather uneasy. I have a sore in my throat. I suffer very much during the early hours of the morning. Can you tell me how I may be cured?" Now, this seems to be the earliest reference that we have to what will turn out to be the fatal throat cancer. Other times he complained that there was a foul taste in his mouth, and he had his own ideas. He thought maybe from taking too much of ice cream and ice. He used to like to have ice in his drinks. He had gone to this festival at Panihati, and he was very critical of Ram and some of the others, that they allowed him to go and sing and dance for hours in rain, and he felt that after that he got sick. So that was one idea in his mind. Some said that this was what was called in those days clergyman's disease, simply from talking too much, that the throat got very irritated. And anyhow, it became worse and worse until one day it began to hemorrhage. And then December 29th, 1885, Dr. Sharkar for the first time diagnosed it as cancer. And in those days, it was considered incurable. Today, we've made a lot of progress, but in those days, it was incurable. Not everyone believed Dr. Sharkar at that time, by the way, but anyhow, this is what we find. So that's December 29th, 1885. Now, the exact date, if we want to put an end to the second part and get to this, the third act of the play, we could say September 26, 1885. This is 5 months after Sri Ramakrishna first felt that pain in his throat, and the devotees felt that it would be better if he moved to Kolkata for a couple of reasons: easier for the doctors to see him there, and easier for the devotees to visit him. For many of them, it was a bit of a distance to go all the way to Dakshineshwar, and they felt he could give better treatment there. The young devotees could even stay with him and serve him. Now, we'll get into this a lot later, the hidden meanings for all of these things. Now, we know that because of this illness, because of the move to Calcutta, that it was a chance to bind together the future monastics and also the householder devotees. It was his chance to give his final message and teachings, to reveal his true mission. He'll make many statements about why he came, why he has to give of the body, different things. So these will all represent this Antya Lila, this untying of the knot, and laying the groundwork for the play that comes after that, which we can say is the creation of the Ramakrishna order, the ascension of a Holy Mother. Holy Mother now will play the major role, and she'll play that for the next 34 years, till the end of her life. She was the guiding light of the Ramakrishna order. for the rest of her life. Whatever she said was the final word, more than Swamiji, Swami Brahmananda, or any of them. And this is also the final training of Narendra to carry the message of Sri Ramakrishna throughout the world, to the West also. So what happened when they decided to take Sri Ramakrishna to Calcutta, that he stayed initially in the house of his very beloved disciple, Balaram Bose. Today, this is Balaram Mandir, one of the centers of the order. It's said that Sri Ramakrishna stayed there on 100 different occasions. So it was a very blessed place, and the family was very blessed. He stayed there more than any other place in Kolkata. So he went there on September 26th, 1885, and stayed there for 1 week. This was a chance for them to try to find a place for him to stay. And they found a small house nearby. And as soon as Ramakrishna saw it, he said, I won't stay there. It was a very cramped, a very dingy place, and it was a very bad idea for them to suggest that. So, and he was used to living in, first of all, village life growing up, and then the beautiful compound at Dakshineswar. So he went back to Balaram Bose's house, and then they found a place in the neighborhood of Shyam Bazar. And this now is a thriving center of the order. Many of you probably have been there. If you go to Balaram Bose's house, you can walk there. It's very close to M's house also. So he went there on December 9th, 1885, and this is where he stayed until his final Mahasamadhi on August 16th, 1886. Now I want to go through some of the important and interesting questions that arise about this. What was Sri Ramakrishna's own opinion regarding the fatal disease that he died from? Because everybody had their own opinion. Some believed it was a mere show. Some believed that he didn't feel any of the pain. What was his own opinion about all of this? What was the reason for it? Could he have cured it? What was the deeper purpose of this final phase of his life? And what positive things came out of this? Because as painful as it was for everyone to watch, this was important for the future of his mission. Now, the disease. When Sri Ramakrishna first felt that scratchiness of the throat, he didn't think it was anything very dangerous. As I said, he thought maybe he'd caught cold when he went to Panihati, and there was all the rain, and then taking too much of ice and ice cream. And there was another theory, which Ramakrishna also accepted to some extent, that when he went into ecstasy and samadhi, that it caused the blood to rush upward. And this was also a cause for the bleeding of the throat. Whether it's true or not, we don't know, but Sri Ramakrishna seemed to accept that because Dr. Sharkar used to warn him that you go into bhava, it's bad for you. It will be bad for the disease and everything. So it doesn't seem that he felt that this was a final disease, that it would be incurable or anything. He started to get that idea by listening to the different doctors, Dr. Sharkar especially, and sometimes he would ask them, this oshadho, is this an incurable disease? And many of them didn't want to say too much. And then there were some who believed that Sri Ramakrishna could cure himself. There were all different types of opinions at that day. But Dr. Sharkar was a hard-nosed scientist. And he said whatever they may say, that modern-day science in those days had no cure for any of these things. Now, we'll find that Sri Ramakrishna made many prophetic statements beforehand about his final days, and they turned out to be almost literally 100% true. Even though he didn't say anything, it'll be throat cancer or anything, he had some feeling that at the end of his life, he wouldn't be able to take solid food. And he mentioned this on various occasions, that he would have to live on, in the English version of the gospel, that they say pudding. But it was really the suji payas that we find him taking it at the end of his life, and that Holy Mother would prepare it for him and everything. So we find December 23rd, 1885, Sri Ramakrishna said, "It was revealed to me in a vision that during my last days I should have to live on pudding. During my present illness, my wife was one day feeding me with pudding. I burst into tears and said, 'Is this my living on pudding near the end, and so painfully?' Then he also said that when you find me spending time living in Kolkata, mixing and eating with everyone, and giving away my precious gems to one and all, you'll know that it's coming close to the end of the play." On March 11th, 1886, this is all from the Gospel, he said to M, "If the body were to be preserved a few more days, many people would have their spirituality awakened." Then after a few minutes, he continued, "But this is not to be. This time the body will not be preserved." And then he paused for a moment and said, "Such is not the will of God. This time the body will not be preserved, lest finding me guileless and foolish, people should take advantage of me, and lest I, guileless and foolish as I am, should give away everything to everybody. In this Kali Yuga, you see, people are averse to meditation and japa." So Sri Ramakrishna used to refer to his life as a type of bazaar. This in Bengali, they have this haat, this all through India and actually many places of the world. You find it in the Middle East. There'll be a kind of fair that's set up, marketplace that's set up, just a temporary thing. Maybe once a week it'll be set up. You'll see people coming from all over nearby villages. I've seen this in many places. It's very interesting. There'll be an open, empty field, and they'll come and they'll set up their tents and they'll bring all of their wares and things to sell and everything. And this will go on. People will bargain back and forth. And he says that as it gets later and later in the day, they don't bargain as much. They start to give things away at a good price. And then at the very end, rather than take things back, they'll even start giving things away to anybody and everybody. And that's the sign that they're about to, this hadbhanga, that they're about to dismantle this bazaar that's been set up, this marketplace that's been set up. So Sri Ramakrishna used to use that illustration, that this was the sign when he started giving things away very easily, that it's time for the marketplace to be dismantled. And because we see in the earlier how Sri Ramakrishna was very cautious and careful about those whom he chose, that those whom he considered to be his very own, he would touch them, give him samadhi and everything. And towards the end, especially on Kalpataru Day, how whoever came, there were one or two exceptions, but generally whoever came, he would touch them. So he started just, and they would have some spiritual type of experience. So this was also a sign for us and a sign for him, that this was the way the Divine Mother was telling him that your days are numbered. This play will come to an end before too long. Now, did he give everything away? He saved his most precious gems for his beloved Naren. And this is a very important part of the last months of his life. And another sign that the market was to be dismantled, that he was giving away everything to his beloved Naren. We know that incident where he asked Naren to touch him. He went into samadhi, and Naren felt this tremendous shock and lost consciousness. And afterwards, Ramakrishna said, "And now I'm simply a penniless fakir. Whatever treasures I had, I've given everything to you." So this is that other very important part of this final act of the play. And another thing that Ramakrishna used to say, now my mind is being attracted to the formless absolute. And this was also a sign. And seeing God dwelling within all beings, not going to ecstasy anymore, all different signs that the play was coming to an end. December 23rd, 1885, Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room in Kashipur, and he went into a deep state of samadhi. After coming down, he said to M, I see everything passing from form to formlessness. I want to tell you all the things I saw, but I cannot. Well, this tendency of mine toward the formless is only a sign of my nearing dissolution. Isn't that so? Then he continued, even now I am seeing the formless, indivisible Satchidananda, just like that. But I have suppressed my feelings with great difficulty. To M, what you said about the sifting of disciples was right. This illness is showing who belongs to the inner circle and who to the outer. Those who are here renouncing the world belong to the inner circle, and those who pay occasional visits and ask, how are you, sir, belong to the outer circle. Now, one thing we should mark is that there are other times when he tells him specifically that you belong to the inner circle. So it's not simply the future monastics, but including all of them. Now, what about the disease itself? How did the devotees look upon it? There was a great deal of difference of opinion. How did Sri Ramakrishna look upon it? Ramchandra Datta was, he was actually a cousin of Swamiji's. He was of the opinion that Sri Ramakrishna was an avatar. He was one of the first to really proclaim Sri Ramakrishna as an avatar, and that it was almost a trick, that he did it for his own hidden purpose. When that purpose was fulfilled, that he could make himself better again, or at least he could cure himself. So he thought it was a bit of a sham, we can say, that it wasn't really just some type of physical illness, a ruse with some mysterious purpose, sifting the inner and the outer. Now, these things happen. It happened naturally because of this, but this Ram and some others felt that he was doing it somehow on purpose to bind all of the disciples together, and that once he had done this, the disease would vanish and he'd be his old self again, or through his yogic powers, he could cure himself. Now, could he have done it? This is hard to say. It wasn't possible for Sri Ramakrishna to focus his mind on the body. So one reason it was impossible. Did he have that type of power? Certainly to cure himself to some extent, or to extend his life, but the body won't live forever. And that was also Sri Ramakrishna's strong belief, that he had a human body. We'll get to all of this also. Anyhow, we have this camp, which was mostly the householders. This would be Ram and Girish and others. And then Narendra and the future monastics, they felt that the disease was real, that Sri Ramakrishna had a human body like everyone else, and regardless of the power that he had, spiritual powers, that he would very likely not recover from the disease. Now, of course, they prayed that he would. They also had some feeling that he could cure himself, but they didn't think that this was just a trick that Sri Ramakrishna was playing on everybody for some hidden purpose. Now, what about Sri Ramakrishna himself? Generally, he took this final view. And he spoke many, many times about the human nature of the avatar. In fact, he emphasized that more than the divine nature. Because everyone accepts the fact avatar is God incarnated on earth. He never claimed it was a trick. He claimed that he had a human body, that this is just the way things are, and that even the avatar has to go through these things. At most, he could say that this was the plan of the Divine Mother. Not that he was the one who ordained all of this to happen, but she had her own purpose to fulfill through him, and this is why he was suffering like that, in order to get her work done. Now, part of this work, of course, was the separation for the inner and the outer. This is something recorded on August 9th, 1885. This was actually before Sri Ramakrishna left Dakshineshwar for Calcutta. He said to the devotees, "Now there is no outer manifestation of divinity that keeps the weeds away. Only genuine devotees will remain with me now. Do you know why I have this illness? It has the same significance. Those whose devotion to me has a selfish motive behind it will run away at the sight of my illness." And he also saw this as an opportunity to begin his future monastic order, to unite all of the young men who would be the monks of the order, and also to make Holy Mother the leader of all of that. So Sri Ramakrishna saw a hidden significance behind his illness, but that doesn't mean he thought it was something that wasn't real. If it was a device, it was the Divine Mother who did it. This was always his feeling, that nothing was his will. His will was not separate from the will of the Divine Mother. So the common idea was that the avatar physical body is not the same even. Mendel, everything is different with the avatar. And Sri Ramakrishna, as I say, he emphasized this other idea that the avatar also has a human mind and a human body and will experience human emotions, will be the same. Sometimes he says the same, exactly the same. Of course, we know we can't compare ourselves to Sri Ramakrishna, but just in general, that they also come with this human body and this human mind. He was very fond of repeating this one line, Ponchu Bhute Fade, Brahma Pade Kade, that even Brahman weeps, caught in the snare of the five elements, with specific reference to God taking human form as the avatar. So when the Lord takes a human birth, he also falls under the sway of Maya. Thakur quoted this little Bengali verse on several occasions. One on December 22nd, 1883. He's explaining to M the mystery of the avatar. He says, "Not all by any means can recognize an incarnation of God. Assuming a human body, the incarnation falls a victim to disease, grief, hunger, thirst, and all such things, like ordinary mortals. Rama wept for Sita." And then he quotes again, "Brahman weeps, entrapped in the snare of the five elements." Yeah, we say Chinmaya and Komalangam, that Thakur, that his body was made of pure consciousness. There's a little bit of hyperbole. But Komalangam, he also had a very tender body that could be hurt very easily. He could cut his finger on the sharp edge of a luchi. How tender he was. So both are there. Then he talks about the incarnation of Varaha. He says Vishnu, after taking birth as a sow, he had to kill the demon, Hiranyaksha, and he lived happily nursing the little baby pigs, completely forgetting himself, acting as if he's just like one of them. And the gods didn't know what to do. They called Shiva, and he went down with his trident and killed the body of the pig, and then Vishnu left laughing and went back to heaven. So Sri Ramakrishna mentions all of these things. Again, the same idea. This is August 28th, 1885. Sri Ramakrishna asked M why he has his illness. Thakur was always interested in knowing what theory other people had about him and how they estimated him. People will not have the courage to approach you unless you resemble, this is M saying, people will not have the courage to approach you unless you resemble them in all respects. They are amazed to find that in spite of such illness, you don't know anything but God. And then Sri Ramakrishna replied, Balaram also said, if even you can be ill, then why should we wonder about our own illness? Lakshmana was amazed to see that Rama could not lift his bow on account of his grief for Sita. And then again Thakur quotes, even Brahman weeps, entangled in the snare of the five elements. So through all of these, it's clear that Thakur is referring to his own illness and his own physical body. All of this because he had to incarnate himself as others do. Now, what else did Sri Ramakrishna think about this illness? He had many other ideas about it. That he talked about taking on the karma of his disciples, and particularly Girish Ghosh. I always feel bad for Girish if he heard about these things, but most of the other disciples, the young disciples, were perfectly pure. There was no, but Girish, he said that he committed so many sins that if you pile them up together, it'll be like the Himalayas. Thakur sometimes said, you see this illness of the throat, this is because of Girish, who are taking on the karma of others also. And as I said, he seemed to accept the idea that this repeated samadhi was not good for him. Even people touching his feet. Now, this Dr. Sarkar, he had some type of mania about this, that he couldn't bear people taking the dust of Sri Ramakrishna's feet, that went against everything that he believed in somehow, but he would warn Sri Ramakrishna that this is also, you're taking on karma, this is also not good for you. And Thakur seemed to agree. He said, but what can I do? And then Dr. Sarkar thinks that, you're admitting that you're doing a sinful thing by letting them do that. And then Emma has to explain, no, he knows he's taking on some of their karma. It won't be good for him. But what can he do? He was born for that purpose. And then Dr. Sarkar was a little embarrassed that he had misunderstood that way. Now the question comes, was it painful for Sri Ramakrishna? Now, it's a strange question because it seemed to be terribly painful. Certainly there were times that Sri Ramakrishna was in an ordinary state of mind when it would be almost unbearably painful. And he talks about it, with not being able to speak, not being able to take any food. October 6th, 1885, he said, my throat feels as if it is cracking. Then he said, it feels as if someone were piercing my throat with a knife. And then a very well-known statement that he made to him, I'm bearing all of this cheerfully, for otherwise you would be weeping. If you all say that it is better that the body should go rather than suffer this torture, I am willing. Now, this is all when Sri Ramakrishna, when his mind is on a lower plane. And for him, lower plane means go into the heart center. His mind would never go down to any center below that. But still, this is when he had this awareness of the outer world and the physical body. Thakur used to talk about Chaitanya Deva having these three different states, that the highest one where he's unconscious of everything, lost in ecstasy. Then the next, when he's aware of things, but in an ecstatic mood, he can sing and dance. And then lowest, when the mind comes down and he can converse with people and live in the world as others do. So we know that this was the case with Sri Ramakrishna. When he would go into samadhi, there's no question of feeling any pain. There's no awareness of the body at all. No consciousness of any individuality at that time. So there's no question that he would feel no pain at that time. Now, in the middle state, mind comes down a little bit. Somehow the mind can also be separated from the pain. Now, how do we know this? Because there were times when Sri Ramakrishna would come down from samadhi, and then he would say, now I feel all right. So that means that somehow the mind was still pulled high enough so that he wasn't feeling that terrible pain. And then in the lowest state, no doubt it was excruciating pain, but he had the conviction and experience of himself as not being the body, so that he could disengage himself. The pain would be there, but somehow he would know himself to be something other than that. Now, how do we know this? Because there's another little incident where he's talking about how painful it is, and Harinath, the future Swami Turiyananda, he says to Sri Ramakrishna, but sir, it seems to me that you're in a state of bliss. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, the rascal has found me out. So this means that Thakur had the ability to feel that bliss of the Divine Mother dwelling within, even at the same time that he's feeling that pain. So this is a unique thing. Of course, some of this we find even with the direct disciples, Swami Turiyananda especially, how he could undergo surgery, painful back surgery, by withdrawing his mind from the body. This is the tremendous power of the mind that he had. But for Sri Ramakrishna, these were natural things. He didn't have to really make any effort, and he didn't do it in order to avoid the pain. But this is the way he explained all of these things. So he used to sing the nice Bengali song, that the pain of the body remain with the body. Oh, my mind, you remain in bliss. And that was his state, really. Even when he felt that tremendous pain, he could still be in a state of bliss, because he felt that eternal, unbreakable communion with the Divine Mother at all times. And he saw divinity everywhere. So despite that pain, his mind could still remain in some blissful type of state. Now we see all of these other purposes somehow to make all of the young disciples come together and to form a bond of love among them, and ultimately to renounce the world. Now, Sri Ramakrishna did not specifically start a monastic order. He didn't tell all of them, you have to take vows of sannyasa, anything like that. But there was one particular incident. This took place on January 12th, 1886. This is Makara Sankranti. This was Swamiji's birthday, actually. And the elder Gopal, he was the only future monastic disciple who was older than Sri Ramakrishna. He brought to Sri Ramakrishna 12 Rudraksha malas and 12 pieces of Garawa cloth. His thinking was that Thakur would bless them and he could distribute them to wandering monks. This was considered something, a meritorious type of thing to do, that many people would do something like that. So he wanted him to bless the mala and the Garo, and then he could distribute them. And Sri Ramakrishna said to him, you will not find any greater monks than these young boys here. Give them to those boys. Each one is equal to 1,000 monks. So this is how Sri Ramakrishna, really, we trace our monastic order back to that. So they put on the cloth and they made pranam to Sri Ramakrishna. And some of them even wore that Garawa. We don't hear too much about this, at least some of the time, and were criticized very much by some of the householders. Again, Ram and some of the others, that who do they think they are, that they're dressed up like they're big sadhus and everything. But Thakur had given it to them. So this was his way of organizing the monastic order in order to spread his teachings. And this was really one of his main teachings, this need for renunciation in order to have the highest type of realization. And he knew that this would spread even to the West. Thakur was a visionary. He would see these things. During this period, one day he had a vivid dream. He said that he saw people speaking a different language, wearing different clothes, having fair complexion, and found that they were also worshiping him and that they would also follow his teachings. Now, the other thing that took place was the final preparation of Narendra to be the leader of the monastic order and to found the order, really, and to carry the message of Sri Ramakrishna throughout the world. And he did this, Thakur did this in various ways. One was the Nirvikalpa Samadhi of Swamiji. And he says that Narendra for a long time has been pestering me. He wants to have that highest type of experience. I keep telling him, wait. And then one day, he's sitting in meditation, and again, this elder Gopal was there, and Swamiji goes into a strange mood and says, oh, what's happening? I can't feel my body. And then he goes into the state where he's completely lost to the world, this Nirvikalpa Samadhi state. Even the body starts to feel a little cold. You don't see signs of life. And this elder Gopal even was afraid, oh, Swamiji may have passed away. In those days, people died young. It was not such a far-fetched thing. We'll see how many of the disciples. Swamiji, of course, will not even live to 40. So he ran to Sri Ramakrishna, and he said that what is happening to Narendra? And then Sri Ramakrishna, he knew all of this. This was whether he had the power to cure his cancer, he had the power to do these things. We know that. And he said, he's been pestering me so long to have this experience, let him remain in that state for some time. Then later, when Swamiji's Narendra's mind came down, he went to see Sri Ramakrishna, and we know that Narendra, that he said, yes, if only I could remain in that state of samadhi, and just come down every once in a while and be able to take some food, nourish the body, then go back into that state. And how he got a great scolding from Sri Ramakrishna that how small-minded you are. I thought you were greater than that. I thought you'll be a great banyan tree. So many people will come and take shelter, take shade, and do how much good you'll do to the world. And now I find you caring only about your own bliss of samadhi and everything. So he scolded him. And then he said that, look, you've had a taste of this, that treasure that you've received through all of this will be kept locked up in a box, as it were, like a precious jewel. You finish mother's work first, and then you'll get the key back to unlock that treasure. So he gave Swamiji the highest experience, at the same time gave a little veil of Maya, so that Swamiji would do his work. And then we know that towards the very end, that no one else would be with Sri Ramakrishna, only Narendra. He would be the only one there, and he would sit by his side, and somehow Sri Ramakrishna, when he was able to speak, he would give all of his teachings, all of his instructions to Swamiji. Detailed, so many different instructions. Swamiji said at one time, when the question came up of worshiping Sri Ramakrishna, he said he never mentioned that to me, but he told me so many other things. And when he founded the order, and people said, even his brother disciples, this lecturing and social service work, that this is your idea, not Thakur's idea. He said, how do you know? He said, he told me so many things. And that shut up everybody. Huh? And they all believed that Sri Ramakrishna was living in Swamiji afterwards. And that was that incident when he touched him, and afterwards, all my power has been given to you. So that was the belief that the Guru dwelled within the disciple from then on, and that everything that Swamiji did was the will of Sri Ramakrishna. Then, towards the very end, just a couple of days before Thakur passed away, slight doubt came into the mind of Narendra, that he said, if in the midst of this terrible suffering, even now Sri Ramakrishna can declare himself an avatar, and then I'll have no doubt about anything. And Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, my child, oh, my Narendra, even now you have doubts. He who was born as Rama, he who was born as Krishna, is now in this body, Sri Ramakrishna, but not in your Vedantic sense, not in the sense that everybody can say God dwells within, in the special sense of the avatar. Then one day, possibly when Sri Ramakrishna was unable to speak, he wrote down on a piece of paper, and scribbling, if you look at it, it's like a child would. When Sri Ramakrishna was young, he had a beautiful handwriting, but he didn't read or write for all of those years. Anyhow, he wrote, Joy Radhe Prema Mohi, Noren Lok Shikha Dibe, Jokon Ghore Baire Hak Dibe, Joy Radhe. So this is victory to Radha, love personified. Naren will teach people when he causes a great commotion, both inside India and outside, victory to Radha. And then he drew a picture of Narendra's face and a peacock. Peacock, we say, indicating a large following that will come. So Naren said, no, I won't do it. That I have no desire. Why do I want to teach people? And Sri Ramakrishna said, it's not up to you. That this is a mother's will. Your very bones will make you do it. Yeah, I mentioned that very final experience. Let me read this in the words of Narendra. He said, 2 or 3 days before leaving the body. Sri Ramakrishna called me to his side one day and asked me to sit before him, looking steadfastly at me, and fell into samadhi. Then I really felt that a subtle force, like an electric shock, was entering my body. In a little while, I also lost outward consciousness and sat motionless. How long I stayed in that condition, I do not remember. When consciousness returned, I found Sri Ramakrishna telling me affectionately, "Today, giving you my all, I have become a penniless beggar. With this power, you are to do many good works for the welfare of the world before you return." Now, we read an interesting thing that Sri Ramakrishna said that with tears in his eyes. Some people wonder, is he crying because he no longer, he's given away all of his powers? I think these are tears of joy, that he knows that with this power he's transmitted to Narendra, that everything will continue. Now, the very final point that I want to make, and this has to do with Sri Ramakrishna's vision for the future role of Holy Mother. One day, when she was serving him, she had also come to the Kashubar garden house, and she stayed in her own separate room and did all of the cooking for him, brought him his food. So one day, he was looking at her very intensely, and she asked, what are you thinking? And he said, "Look here, won't you do anything?" Meaning this taking disciples, spiritual work of the order. "Must I do everything all by myself?" Then Holy Mother said, "But what can I do? I'm a mere woman." Sri Ramakrishna, "No, you will have to do many things." And he prepared her in so many ways. He told her how to recognize which disciples will come. He gave her all of the mantras that she could use for initiation, and really knew that she wasn't an ordinary person. She came with him, and she had to help fulfill the mission. We don't find any other example of every avatar has to come with a Shakti. We don't find any other example where the Shakti aspect had to play such an important role. Equally as important, she had many, many more disciples and had her spiritual ministry for many years longer than Sri Ramakrishna did. There were other important events. I think another important thing that took place was when there was the night of Kali Puja, and they were preparing to have the worship that night, but there was no image or anything. And then Girish, Niranjan, and others, they had this epiphany. We are to worship Sri Ramakrishna as Mother Kali. And so that time he allowed that worship of himself as Mother Kali. So all of these things were the preparation for that final day, and also so much was accomplished because of this final period. The final day we don't talk about very much. It's not a very happy thing to think about. Narendra was massaging Sri Ramakrishna's feet, and Thakur was giving him some last-minute instructions, and mainly, take care of the boys, don't let them go back home. He wanted them to all renounce and to become monks. Then we know this, the final moment, Thakur uttered the name of Kali 3 times in a clear voice, and then lay down a little bit and went into that state of samadhi. Now, he had gone into that state of samadhi so many times that many of them felt, Narendra and others, that this isn't the death of the body, that he'll come down from that state, because in that state, there are no signs of life. That one of the doctors even tried to press Sri Ramakrishna's eye to the eyeball to see if he could feel anything in that state. And they found that no, there's no connection with the body. So many of them felt that. They did all that they could, even rubbing ghee on his back to try to bring Kundalini down and everything. And then finally, they realized that this Nirvikalpa Samadhi was Mahasamadhi. And Dr. Sharkar came and he said that, yes, he declared that death of the body had taken place at noon on the following day, and that play was over. Sri Ramakrishna also, before he passed away, talked about his coming again. And these are all mystical types of statements. We don't know exactly how to explain them. Sometimes he said in 100 years, that's already passed, sometimes 200 years. And he said for some reason, he become Vayukona. Vayukona, when we do puja, all of the different directions, north, northeast, east, southeast, or the 8 directions up and above, 10 different directions, they all have a presiding deity. So this Vayukona is the northwest. So somehow he said that he'll take birth again in the northwest region, whether it means the northwest Calcutta, whether it means Punjab, whether it means Seattle, we don't really know, but he did make various statements on that occasion. And we also know that on so many occasions that the Holy Mother and others saw Sri Ramakrishna, and that he really tried to explain to them that the avatar doesn't disappear. The avatar will remain available in a subtle body. How Holy Mother felt his hand in her hand when she went to remove her bangles. And how we said, don't think that I've gone anywhere. I've gone from one room to another room. I'm still available. Many others have had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna. And we have this faith and conviction that Sri Ramakrishna is still a living presence, whether we take it as dwelling within or a subtle body. Everyone has their own way of understanding this. So it's a sad period, of course, but it's also very inspiring. And we see how every play has to come to an end, and how much was accomplished in those final days, and how the order took its birth, and the monastic order and everything during the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, this Niranjan, Swami Niranjananda, he played an important role during that period because he was the doorkeeper, gatekeeper. He was big and strong and handsome and powerful. When he was young, he used to go around with a bow and arrow in his hand and everything. And he was the one who was designated to keep too many visitors from seeing Sri Ramakrishna. There was that belief that if too many came, he would talk too much. It would aggravate the illness and everything. And again, people touch his feet, that he'll take on their karma and everything. So this was his role. He was born in August of 1862, just outside of Kolkata. His name was Niranjan Ghosh, and he was just this very strong, wonderful figure. Thakur considered him to be one of the Ishvara Kotis. And when he met Sri Ramakrishna, as happened with the other direct disciples, Thakur somehow recognized him, and he always said that he was perfectly guileless, that he was a very good receptacle, Adhar. Thakur used to use that type of language, and very quickly he became so devoted to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother afterwards also. I'll just read about his initiation, and then we can stop. One day I went to visit Sri Ramakrishna. Oh, by the way, his birthday is on the 30th. His birthday coincides with Rakshabandhan, Rakhi, with the day when we tie the sisters on the brothers. One day I went to visit Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. He wrote a mantra on my tongue and asked me to repeat it. What an experience. After returning home, even when my eyes were closed, I began to see innumerable fireflies in my room. The mantra was vibrating in my head, and in every limb of my body I wanted to sleep, but I could not stop the repetition of japa. I had previously been unaware of this phenomenon. I became scared and thought that I would go out of my mind. After 3 days, I returned to Dakshineshwar and said to Sri Ramakrishna, "Sir, what have you done to me?" After listening to my story, he laughed and withdrew the power of the mantra. He then said it is called Ajapa Japa, when the mantra goes on repeatedly, spontaneously, and unceasingly. So, Kamalesti?
All right, thank you.
Huh? Would anyone like to ask anything? We have a few minutes.
Question.
Take a minute.
Right.
Perhaps you would like to tell us how Ma reacted. That is also what she mentioned and how she regarded Sri Ramakrishna. That was also came out that she said when she heard that Thakur has gone, she latched on to Sri Ramakrishna and said, Ma kali tumi chole gele.
Yes. This is, see, Sri Ramakrishna looked upon Holy Mother as Divine Mother. She looked upon him also. Yes, she said, "Oh, Mother, what have I done? What have I done that you've gone from me?" So she looked upon Sri Ramakrishna as Mother. Yes, after Thakur passed away, Holy Mother was in such a state of grief that she really had no desire to live. And because of that, they all decided to take her on pilgrimage. And Swami Yogananda, Swami Abhedananda, I think maybe Latu Maharaj, and it must have been who is that?
Gaurima, probably.
Gaudima, I think her
Gaurima Golapma may have
I think Golap Ma.
Golapma, yes.
Yeah, I think Golap Ma was there also. Anyhow, they all went together, and because Holy Mother had the vision of Sri Ramakrishna from time to time, and because of that incident when she went to remove her bangles, because he appeared to her, that somehow her grief lessened. But it was a terrible shock for her, and all of them. It wasn't just Holy Mother. They said they wandered like orphan boys, the direct disciples. There's such a feeling of loss when Sri Ramakrishna passed away. This is why the role of Swamiji was so important, because after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother went to Kamarpukur. This was the desire. Thakur told him that, first of all, don't stretch out your hand to anyone. Don't beg for anything, and you'll stay in Kamarpukur, that was his village. And she suffered very much there until it became impossible, and the disciples didn't know how she was suffering. When they found out, then they insisted that she have a place to stay in Kolkata, and that she would go back to Jadambati and everything. So it was a very difficult period for Holy Mother and all of, because they had very human hearts. When Swamiji passed away, when Holy Mother had to witness the passing away of many of the direct disciples. Several of them passed away before she did. She passed away in 1920. So each time she would say, "I feel as if another brick has fallen out of the building. Everything is falling apart." That she was tremendously affected by the passing away. So it was very, very difficult for her. But Sri Ramakrishna somehow inspired her, whether through dream or through vision or something, to start taking disciples. This happened, it's some type of experience that Thakur was telling her, this yogin has never received mantra initiation from me, you give him initiation. She wasn't anxious, but it happened 3 times in a row. And then finally she agreed. So she started having her own disciples after that. And we know she had thousands, that after that, that also brought back the will to live a little bit. But you're right, it was a terrible experience for Holy Mother, and to bring back that will to live, even after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, took tremendous effort on her part and on the part of the devotees also.
Right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I will take my leave, and my thanks to all of you for inviting me. And if you ever come to the Washington area, please come and visit us. Okay.
Thank you.
Jai Ma. Okay.
Swamiji,
Uh,
no. So you sometimes visit Raleigh. So if
Yes.
possible, sometimes if you can come another 2 hours, so we'll be
Oh, from Raleigh.
you'll be in stronger.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, we can see if we can arrange it one time. Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Then-
Jai
Jai Thakur.
Jai Thakur. Good.
Thank you.